Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're heading to Japan, known globally for its economy, tech, culture, all of it.
Right. But the question we're asking is, what's the actual financial picture like if you're thinking about living and working there in 2025?
hmm
Especially for professionals, expats.
Exactly. We're not just throwing numbers out. We want to build a kind of financial roadmap.
Right.
We've sifted through a ton of recent research, insights.
Yeah, our mission is really to cut through the noise, give you a shortcut to understanding the Japanese job market average salaries, what influences them.
Concrete numbers, maybe some surprising facts, things to help you plan if you're considering a move or even just curious about Japan's economy.
Precisely.
Okay, let's get into it. We've looked at the 2025 data. The general average salary seems to be landing somewhere around 515,000 to 516,000 JPY a month,
Yep, that's the overall figure.
which for people thinking in US dollars is roughly $3,500 to $3,800 a month. Annually, that's about 6.1, maybe 6.2 million JPY or 40,000 to 42,000 USD a year.
That's the conversion.
Yeah. Seems okay as a starting point, but averages. They can hide things, can't they? Skewed by the really high earners.
No, they absolutely can. And that's where looking at the median salary becomes so important for getting a more realistic view.
The average versus median, always crucial. The median being the exact middle point, right? Half earn more, half earn less.
Exactly. It cuts out the distortion from, say, a CEO's massive salary pulling the average way up.
So what is that median figure for Japan? What does it tell us about the typical earner?
Well, the sources point to a median monthly salary of around 471,000 to 472,000 JPY, so maybe 3,250 to $3,470 USD.
Okay, noticeably lower than the average.
It is. And if you look annually, the median income is closer to 3.96 million JPY. Now, interestingly, this is often calculated from a base monthly wage, maybe around 270,000 JPY, plus the average annual bonus.
Bonuses are key then. We'll need to circle back to that.
Definitely. But the key takeaway here is that median annual income, it's only about 86% of the reported average. It really shows you how much those top salaries affect the average figure.
So for anyone listening and trying to gauge their own potential, the median is probably the better benchmark.
I'd say so, yeah. It's more representative for most people.
Got it. Now, speaking of benchmarks, what about the floor? The minimum wage. How does that work in Japan?
Well, Japan has a standard 40-hour work week. But the minimum wage itself isn't uniform across the country. It's set by regional councils.
So it varies depending on where you are.
Exactly. It reflects local economic conditions. The national weighted average is somewhere between 961 and 1,055 JPY per hour.
And Tokyo, I assume, is at the top?
Predictably, yes. Tokyo has the highest minimum wage, looks like 1113 to 1163 JPY per hour. That's around $7.70 to $8.50 USD.
So comparable to other big international cities like Hong Kong or Seoul.
Yeah, it puts it in that same bracket, shows its status as a major economic center.
Okay, so even at the minimum level, location matters. And that leads us neatly into the bigger factors shaping salaries overall. Location is a huge one, right?
Oh, absolutely. Geographic location is probably one of the primary drivers. Tokyo consistently comes out on top for average salary. We're talking around 575,000 JPY a month there.
Which is about $4,000 USD, you said?
Roughly, yeah. And that's driven by the sheer concentration of businesses' corporate headquarters. It's the economic engine.
How big is the drop-off for other major cities, like Osaka or Yokohama?
Well, they follow pretty closely, but there is a drop. You're looking at maybe 2–5% lower than Tokyo in places like Yokohama, Osaka, and Nagoya. There's the clear hierarchy.
But then there's the cost of living trade-off, isn't there?
Right.
Higher salary in Tokyo, but everything costs more.
Exactly. That's the crucial balance. And if you go the other way, look at more rural areas, salaries might be 20%, even 30% lower than the national average.
But living costs would be much lower, too.
Substantially lower.
Yeah.
So it really depends on your priorities, the buzz and opportunity of the city versus, potentially quieter, more affordable lifestyle elsewhere.
Makes sense. So location is key. What's next?
Education, presumably. Definitely. Education level is a very strong predictor of earnings in Japan. The data is pretty clear on this.
How clear? Like, what are the steps up?
Okay, so someone with a college qualification or a diploma, they're likely earning about 17% more than someone who finished at high school.
Right.
Then jump up to a bachelor's degree, and you're looking at roughly another 24% on top of the college diploma level.
That's quite a jump.
It is, and it keeps going. A master's degree adds another significant chunk, almost 30% more than a bachelor's.
Wow.
And then a PhD. That could add another 23% on top of a master's. So by the time you get to postgraduate level, especially in specialized fields, you could be earning close to double what someone with just a high school diploma makes.
So the investment in higher education really pays off there, financially speaking.
The numbers suggest it does, significantly.
Okay, so degrees matter. What about good old-fashioned experience? How does that layer in?
Experience has a direct impact, especially early on. We see big jumps in the first few years, like 2 to 5 years of experience. You could see an average salary increase of around 32%.
32%, that's substantial.
It is. And then mid-career, say 5 to 10 years, the jump can be even bigger, maybe 36%.
So the gains are front-loaded somewhat.
They are quite significant early on. Growth does tend to slow down a bit after maybe 15 years or so, but salaries generally continue to rise with experience.
Does this tie into that traditional Japanese corporate culture of, loyalty and long service being rewarded?
Very much so.
Huh.
Traditionally, staying with one company for a long time was highly valued and often led to steady, incremental raises, better bonuses, perks. The whole package.
But is that changing at all?
We are seeing a bit of a shift, yeah.
Mm.
Younger generations seem more willing to change jobs to accelerate their career growth, especially if they move to international firms, which might have more purely merit-based pay structures. So it's evolving.
Interesting. Okay, let's talk sectors. Where does the money really flow? Which industries pay the most?
Well, industries needing highly specialized skills are usually at the top.
Oh.
Think medical and healthcare annual salaries there can range from 9.2 million up to over 10 million JPY.
Okay.
Science and technical services are also up there, maybe 8.3 to 9 million JPY. And finance and accounting, looking at roughly 6.4 to 7.2 million JPY annually. Specialized knowledge really commands a premium.
And within those fields, are there specific job titles that consistently pay the most?
Yeah, definitely. Dentists often appear near the top, potentially earning up to 15.6 million JPY a year.
Wow.
CEOs, obviously, up to maybe 14.2 million. CFOs, around 11.5 million. Software engineers are interesting.
How so?
Well, the data varies a bit, depending on the source and the specifics. One source might say 7 million JPY annually on average. Another puts it closer to 11 million, while another gives a range like 4.4 to 7.5 million, specifically for developers or senior engineers in Tokyo.
So it really depends on seniority, the exact role, maybe the type of company.
Exactly. It shows you need to dig into the specifics for your particular situation. It's not always one simple number.
Good point. What about the lower end of the pay scale? Which industries or roles tend to pay less?
Generally, things like education and retail offer lower compensation overall. Specific roles, like a waiter or waitress, might average around 2.4 million JPY annually. That's about 163,000 a month.
Okay.
And English teaching, which is a common route for foreigners, the average salary is around 3.2 to 3.5 million JPY a year. It's important to note that's generally below the average for the education sector as a whole.
So an accessible entry point, perhaps, but not typically a high-earning career path in Japan.
Generally, no.
Okay, one more factor. Age. How does salary typically track with age in Japan?
It generally rises pretty steadily with age and experience, often peaking when people hit those senior or leadership roles.
So maybe late 40s, early 50s?
Typically, yeah. That seems to be the peak earning period. It reflects that traditional seniority system we talked about, loyalty and long service being rewarded over time.
Do you have rough figures for different age brackets?
Sure. Average monthly salary in your 20s might be around 280,000 JPY. In your 30s, maybe 340,000. 40s around for 400,000, and 50s perhaps for 450,000.
And then does it decline closer to retirement?
Often, yeah. There can be a slight decline as people approach retirement, maybe moving into less demanding roles or part-time work. It paints that classic career arc, really.
It really does. Okay, we've covered the main factors, but there are some important nuances in the Japanese job market we need to touch on. Let's start with the gender pay gap. What's the situation there?
It's definitely a significant issue. The data suggests women in Japan earn, on average, about 75.7% of what men earn. The OECD reported the gap at around 22.1% back in 2022.
That's a substantial gap. What's driving it?
Complex. Contributing factors include traditional employment practices that often see more women in non-regular part-time roles. There's lower representation of women in senior leadership positions, occupational segregation women concentrated in lower-paying sectors. And then there are the challenges of balancing work and family in a culture that has historically emphasized very long working hours, especially for men.
A mix of structural and cultural factors, it sounds like.
Very much so.
Okay, what about foreign workers specifically? How do their salaries compare to the national average?
This is actually quite surprising to many. The average monthly salary, specifically for foreigners, is around 232,600 JPY.
which is quite a bit lower than the overall national average you mentioned earlier, right? Around 318,000 JPY.
Significantly lower, yeah. And the main reason seemed to be demographic. Many foreign workers are younger, often in their 20s or 30s, and they tend to have shorter average tenures working in Japan.
And in a system that rewards longevity.
Exactly. It means they often fall into those lower initial salary brackets. And this is crucial, it really depends on the type of work visa.
Ah, okay. How so?
Well, people on technical intern training programs, which are often for more vocational skills, tend to earn less, maybe around 182,000 JPY a month on average. But foreigners on specialized or technical work visas, think IT, engineering, highly skilled professions, their average is much higher, around 297,000 JPY a month.
So having those in-demand specialized skills makes a big difference for foreign workers' earning potential.
Absolutely. Unique skills, advanced degrees, they can definitely command competitive salaries, regardless of nationality.
That's really important context. Now, you mentioned bonuses earlier being part of the median calculation. How significant are they generally in Japan?
Very significant. Bonuses are a major part of the total compensation package for many employees. They're typically paid twice a year, summer and winter, sometimes called the 13th and 14th month pay.
Like getting an extra 2 month salary?
Kind of, but it's crucial to remember they're not always guaranteed or fixed.
Right. Depends on the company's performance, individual performance.
Exactly. Company results, team or individual contributions, the industry you're in, your specific job type, all these factors play a role. The average annual bonus figure we saw was around 671,800 JPY, which is about 4,300 USD.
But some roles get much higher bonuses.
Oh, yes. Professions like university professors, pilots, lawyers, they can see annual bonuses well over 1.5 million, sometimes closer to 3 million JPY. It really boosts their overall earnings significantly.
So definitely something to investigate when looking at a job offer. Understand how the bonus structure works.
Absolutely critical. Don't just look at the base salary.
Okay. What about raises? Salary increments. How often do they happen and how much are they typically?
The average seems to be an increment of about 8%, roughly every 16 months.
16 months, not annually.
Apparently, performance appraisals aren't always strictly on a 12-month cycle, hence the 16-month average period for increments.
Interesting. And does that 8% vary?
Oh, definitely. Varies by industry. Banking might average 8%, IT maybe 6%, education perhaps only 2%, and experience level matters too. Junior staff might get 3–5%, senior folks 10–15%, and top management could see 15–20% raises.
Lots of variation there too. Okay, let's zoom out again. What's the bigger picture for Japan's job market right now? What's the outlook?
Well, the labor market itself is actually pretty robust. Unemployment is low consistently between, say, 2.4% and 3%. And there are a lot of job openings. Some reports mention figures as high as 18 million available positions.
High demand for workers then, but isn't Japan facing huge demographic challenges? The aging population, low birth rate?
That's the massive challenge hanging over everything, yes. The aging population and declining birth rate are projected to cause significant workforce shortages. We're talking potentially 3.4 million workers short by 2030 and maybe 11 million short by 2040.
Wow, those are staggering numbers. How are the government and companies responding? They must be doing something proactive.
They are definitely trying to be proactive. The government has rolled out these new Trinity labor market reforms.
What does that involve?
It's a multi-pronged approach. They're trying to promote genuinely flexible work arrangements, not just, tinkering with overtime. They're looking at ways to extend retirement ages, keep experienced people working longer, and there's a big push for reskilling and upskilling the existing workforce.
And bringing in people from overseas.
A huge push there. There are plans to invite, I think, 1 million immigrants by 2026 and specifically target 820,000 skilled workers over the next 5 years. They've even introduced a specific digital nomad visa for high-earning remote workers. You need an annual income of 10 million JPY for that one.
So a real effort to attract global talent.
Definitely seems like it. They recognize the need.
What kind of skills are most in demand in this changing landscape?
Technology is huge. AI, cybersecurity, data science, software development, all very sought after. Healthcare professionals are also in high demand given the aging population. And engineering remains critical.
So continuous learning, upskilling, that's key for anyone working there or hoping to.
Absolutely crucial to stay competitive. And we're seeing related trends like the rise of remote work. About 20% of businesses in Japan now have fully remote or hybrid setups, partly driven by digitization efforts.
And what about actual wage growth? Are salaries finally starting to move after years of stagnation?
It seems like they are, slowly but surely. which is significant because, as you say, many workers haven't seen real pay rises in decades. Large companies are forecasting average salary increases of around 4.7% for 2025.
That's positive.
It is. Plus, the government's focus on raising the minimum wage is also putting some upward pressure on wages, especially at the entry level. So the needle is moving, albeit gradually.
Okay, this brings us back to the core question for anyone listening. Can you actually live comfortably on the average kind of salary we've been discussing?
And the answer, maybe unsurprisingly, is it really depends, mostly on location and your lifestyle choices.
Let's take Tokyo as the benchmark again. What kind of salary do you realistically need there?
Okay, so for a single person in Tokyo, basic monthly expenses, rent, food, transport, utilities, you're probably looking at somewhere between 210,000 and 270,000 JPY.
Right, so the median monthly salary we discussed earlier just about covers that basic level.
Just about covers the basics. But for a truly comfortable lifestyle in Tokyo, being able to save, enjoy leisure activities, not just scrape by as a single person, probably needs an annual salary closer to 7 or 8 million JPY.
Which is significantly higher than the average or median figures.
It is, and for a family of 3 or 4 in Tokyo, you're likely looking at needing 10 to 12 million JPY per year for real comfort.
That really puts the headline salary figures into perspective against the cost of living in the capital.
It absolutely does. But again, contrast that with more affordable cities. Places like Fukuoka, Sapporo, Hiroshima, your living costs could easily be 30–40% lower.
Making those average or even slightly below average salaries go much further.
Exactly. A comfortable life is much more attainable outside the major metropolitan hubs on a more typical salary. Even the minimum wage, while tight, can cover basic essentials outside the big cities.
Good to know. Beyond the salary itself, what about typical employee benefits in Japan? What else adds to the overall package?
There are some pretty standard ones. Annual health checks are common, often legally mandated. Overtime pay is regulated. Commute allowances help with train fares, for example, are very common. And sometimes supplementary health insurance or other medical top-ups, these definitely add value.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, if someone is looking to navigate this market, find a job, negotiate salary, what are your key pieces of advice?
First, really understand the job trends in your specific field. Know where the demand is hot. Second, don't just focus on technical skills. Develop those soft skills, communication, adaptability, problem solving. They're increasingly important.
Networking's still important?
Very. Network effectively. Connections can still open doors. And fourth, commit to continuous learning, upskill, reskill, stay relevant.
What about language? Is Japanese essential?
It's a definite advantage, especially for integrating and for certain roles. But for some high-demand technical jobs, particularly in international firms, it's not always an absolute must-have, though it always helps. Also, be prepared for the process applications. It can sometimes seem a bit confusing, interviews might feel long, and salary ranges aren't always upfront.
So do your homework, like listening to this deep dive.
Exactly. Doing research beforehand, understanding the benchmarks, knowing the nuances, it gives you a massive advantage and helps set realistic expectations.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful. We've really unpacked the layers of Japan's job market, the salary ranges, the key influences like location and education, the crucial difference between average and median. I hope this gives everyone listening a much clearer picture and empowers them to make informed choices.
Absolutely. And maybe one final thought to leave people with. Japan is clearly committed to attracting global talent, partly driven by its demographic needs. How will this push interact with its deep-rooted traditions of company loyalty and seniority, especially as global mobility increases and the demand for digital skills skyrockets? It's a fascinating dynamic to watch.
A great question. How might your own career path intersect with that future? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.